Aloha. I'm
Hi,
Tom.
Tom.
Hey,
Aloha.
Patty.
Hi,
Good to
Tom.
see you.
Tom.
Anyway, Jojo, you really put together a meeting. I'm overwhelmed. This is beautiful. So look at, it didn't, when you were asking which Tom, I wanted Tom to start. He wanted me to start. We could have actually done a thing where I told his story and he told mine. We lived them together. We've actually done this little thing before where we both spoke at the same meeting. We've had fun doing that kind of stuff over the years. And so here we are. And we're going to go for it. I don't even know where to start. So anyway, I will tell you that I was a surfer in the 60s and I was looking for enlightenment. So where did I go? I went to the North Shore of Oahu. I got kicked out of high school and I went to the North Shore of Oahu. And that's where the surfers were all there looking for enlightenment. And we were doing it through drugs, of course. And so I didn't realize then that I had to quit the drugs to, find any kind of spirituality in my life. And so I just kept showing up every day and doing it. It was Tim Leary and his gang were all over there and stuff like that. And this was 1962, I believe. And I've known Tom for like really a long, we met in 1960 or 61 or 60, right in the lower, we've been hanging out together. And as we always, whoever talks first always says, the way we met is I was over at his house with his big brother, Richie, and Tom came home and there we were all sniffing glue on the dining room table. And Tom and I've been bonded ever since, after the glue sniffing thing. So we always tell that little story when we speak. But so anyway, I'd never heard of any of this recovery stuff in the early 1960s. Never, I had no idea about it. And I can just tell you one morning, I lived at different spots, but at this point I was living right in front of Rocky Point. That's a surfing spot. Surfers will know where it is. And there was one more house next door to me. Then the beach was there. The house next door to me was this big 4-bedroom house for rent or for sale. And there was no other houses. It was the ocean. So I was kind of up early this one morning and I heard a car coming down our lane, and I knew that there was nobody beyond me. So I didn't know what this car was doing coming right into my house almost. And I looked out the window and saw a very strange lady get out of the car. And she had salt and pepper hair down to her waist. And it was something, and it got my attention, but I went out for a walk on the beach myself. And as I was coming back, I saw this woman standing out in front of her house. And I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Tom." And she goes, "Well, hi, Bird, I'm Flowbird." And we'll explain that later, the name. But anyway, she just immediately started telling me her story or all this stuff about herself and that she was, in recovery and And it was, she said, I look for lost souls and take them to a new way of life. And that's what she did. That's what all she did. Look at this was that the date was now 1968 when I met her and she moved into that house. And I can tell you, she died in 1978. And Tom and I can tell you, that's what she did. She found lost souls and she took them to a new way of life. And people so lost as he and I were, there was no hope. We should not be here at all. There was no hope for us. And she just adopted us, and he'll tell his part of the story when I won't get into that. But it was funny because I was at Rocky Point, just a half a mile up the beach is Sunset Beach. And that's where his little drama took place, his first time he met her. But anyway, what happened is she started a meeting at that house, that big, oh yeah, so the landlord came out to that house the next day and found her in it. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, I was led here." And she was, and that was part of the story she told me. She got up very early every morning and meditated, at 3 or 4 in the morning, and meditated for several hours, and kept a journal. She kept a journal and wrote in it wherever God, she called it God, wherever God sent her, she would go. And on this one morning, she was meditating like always, and it was 1968, and God led her to the house, to that big house right next door to me, and that was supposed to happen. And I went to a meeting that night, and it wasn't so much. I'll tell you, it wasn't so much that I heard this guy speak, and it wasn't so much that I was in a room where everybody was talking about getting loaded or drinking, because I did that. Everybody I knew did that. So it wasn't that I was in a room where everybody was doing that. It just was the truth. And so this guy talked about his fear, and this was real important to me. He talked about being scared of life, not fitting in anywhere. I'd never heard anybody say that. I lived not fitting in. I did not feel like I fit in anywhere. When my mom dropped me off at nursery school, it was like, I was a lost soul. I didn't know what to do. I thought everybody in the room had it together and knew what the teacher was talking about, and I didn't. But that was the beginning of my recovery, because those feelings of not feeling like I fit in is what I label addiction today. That's a good sign that you're an addict, if you don't feel like you fit in anywhere. And I've always defined that. And recovery is finding the steps and working the steps with a sponsor and getting at one with life. And that's to me, that's recovery. That's what recovery is all about. So in step 2, the insanity is the using, and the sanity is the recovery part of it. So I always kind of just base that on that when I'm working with sponsees and working the steps. And so I started going to meetings at this house, and we started learning. I started telling everybody around the North Shore about this lady I met, because she was like a spiritual teacher, like a guru. Now I called her my guru. Nobody else did. And she didn't care if I did or didn't. She didn't tell me to do that, but she was my spiritual teacher right away, right on in the beginning. And I took it very serious. And so I started telling everybody about this lady, and they started coming over and meeting her, and she would be very spine. There would be a meeting automatically, everybody just sitting around asking her questions and stuff. And we started, I lived right next door, and then a couple of guys moved into the house with her. And we just started learning about stuff, going to her every morning and talking and getting guidance. And the guidance was always about love. It was always about go put love into action. Don't whine. And if you want to go out and get loaded, do if you're going to whine. But if not, go put love into action. And that's what we started learning to do without asking for anything back. This was the lessons we started learning early on. And we learned how to meditate, and in our own ways. It started taking shape, because this lady Flowbird, she, like I said, meditated every day, and she followed her guidance. In that 10 years that I spent with her, from 68 to 78, I saw her go around the world 3 times, I think, without any money, without any craving for security or anything, And this is what we started to learn is split. You get up in the morning, you go off, get your coffee or whatever, and you go find a place by yourself, and you just sit down and start to listen to the silence, and write in. We all had journals then and stuff. I think Tom still has his journal going. My meditation changed a few years back, and it's more just, anyway, it's whatever it is. But so anyway, that's the way I met her. That's the way all of us met this lady. And the reason we called her Flowbird is her name was Florence. And she had in 1960, she had a spiritual awakening of the 20th century fox kind, is what I call it, because it was the real thing where the whole universe turned the white light and love just rushed through her. And from that day on, her only thing she did in life was carry the message of that spiritual awakening. That is the message we carry in the 12th step, is the spiritual awakening. And we learned how to do that by watching it put into action and not even knowing what we were doing, but we watched it. I forgot to look at what time it was. Anyway, Jojo, if I'm talking when I'm not supposed to be sure to put a 5-minute sign up or something. But anyway, this is the way it all began, and it's still going on, with, I know with Tom and I, anywhere we're asked to share or do anything, somehow this story comes up and it goes on and on, and at one point I went back to California, and we stayed at that house for about 6 months, and then I was married and I had kids, and we went back to California and lived in Venice for a while. And then Tom was in a place for the criminally insane, which tells you a lot about him right in those days. But anyway, it's really hard for me not to tell his story because I want it so bad. It was so groovy the way it happened. But anyway, I'll let him get into that. For me, he goes like this, don't worry about it. Okay, I'm going to tell it that. Anyway, I came back to California. He got out of his institution and he wanted to go to Hawaii, and he came over because I'd been in Hawaii since the early 60s. And so he wanted to go to Hawaii, and I started telling him about it, and I showed him a picture of this lady, Flowbird, very different looking. Like I said, long salt and pepper hair and skinny and skin worn out from the sun, living on the beach and stuff like that. It was quite a thing. And so he wanted to go to Hawaii. So I told him, go to the North Shore. That's where all the young people are. That's where everybody's hanging out, is the North Shore. So he got there late at night, and he just went to Sunset Beach, and it was just all dark and sunny. And it was, dark and sunny. That's where I'm at today. But anyway, he lays himself down under some bushes and goes to sleep. He wakes up the next morning and became very aware. The first thought was, I don't have any dope, what have I done? I think he had a bag of something, but he basically was out of dope, and he was in a place he didn't know what was going on or where he was going with it all. And he just suddenly looked up, and there was this lady standing on the beach. And the way she got there, she was about a half a mile up the beach, and she woke up that morning and immediately in meditation, was told to go to Sunset Beach right now. Urgent. But this is the way it was with her. She was told to go to my house urgently, and now it's Tom's house urgently. Both on the beach within a mile of each other is where it happened. And he walks up to her, and he's stuttering. And he gets my name out, and she heard that. And she said, "You're why I'm here. Put your stuff in the car." And that was 52 years ago, 52, I think, and he hasn't been loaded since, so that's the way our recovery started, with this strange lady appearing and basically adopting us and basically giving us a life that we never could believe could be true, ever. And so many stories go along with in that 10 years that we spent with her, and the stuff we learned by putting love into action and by putting life into action and not questioning anything. That's what we really learned to do, is not question things. It's not easy when you're sitting in meditation and you get this feeling to go, you're supposed to do something. Well, fear comes in. You don't know. It's an unknown thing. And she taught us how to get rid of that, to just always focus on the other. If you're being sent somewhere, it's for a reason, and bring the love out. Love is the answer. I remember my very first I had more than this, but my first big one was when I got sent somewhere and started following my heart religiously like this. By the way, every significant thing in my life is because of following the guidance in step 11, every significant thing. So I'm sitting in my meditation room, and it's 1989, and all of a sudden I get this thing about India, and all of a sudden in big neon letters, Calcutta, India comes across the arch of my visual space. And I went out and told Bia, and it happened more than once. And the chicken skin on my arms was just standing up, the hair on my arms, and I just thought, I guess I'm going to India, And I did. I came out and told my wife, I think I'm supposed to go to India, and she said, okay. She's said okay many times before that, because she got used to me coming out saying, I'm going here, I'm going there. And I was going to India, and I went to Calcutta, and it's a very large city, and it's huge, and it's a little scary, but they also call it the city of joy, and there's a reason they do that, because it is the city of joy. And all I knew is I wanted to work with addicts, and so I got off the plane at 1:00 in the afternoon. I mean, it's so crowded there. There was everything that was breathing and living, walking the streets, just every animal I could think of. I saw every person. And I took a cab down to the poorest part of town, and I got a hotel room for $1.25. And I walked out and on the street and got a cab and said, I want to go see Mother Teresa. That's another thing. I knew Mother Teresa was in that area somewhere. So this nun took me there, but the mother wasn't at the mission at that time, but she was out somewhere. So I kept on telling this nun, I want to work with addicts. I want to work with addicts. I knew that was why I was there. And yet World Service had just sent people to India, to Bombay though, which is now Mumbai, and they connected with NA there, but they didn't connect with NA in Calcutta. But I still knew that was where I was supposed to go, whether they had connected or not. And so I kept on telling this nun, I want to work with the addicts. She took me to the orphanage where people are dying. She took me to the orphanage where the little kids are, and then the house of death and dying where they pick people up off the street. It was a fantastic thing, but I was looking for the addicts. Anyway, at the end, she finally took me to this house and dropped me off. And I told this lady what I was doing, and I just gotten there, and I was looking for addicts to work with. And this is out of nowhere. Now it's about 5:00 in the evening. I've only been in India 4 or 5 hours, in the most crowded city I've ever been in my life. And she took me right across the street from the house I was in, was a little schoolhouse with little tiny chairs and all that. They have these little tiny chairs, and there was a meeting starting in 1 hour. I was led right to a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous in 1 hour. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would happen to us when we were traveling, just that kind of stuff. And I went to that first meeting, and I connected up with people, and one guy is still, clean today. Should have in his 30s or 40 years clean by now. And it's beautiful, it's just beautiful to see that. And also I met a gentleman there that I had never really heard of, but now, of course I have, and you guys probably have, especially the East Coast people. But at that meeting was Father Egan, the junkie priest. And so I started hanging out with him, and he said, well, meet me tomorrow night, because he was there with some of the renegade priests from Mother Teresa's, and they wanted to start a recovery house. And so I went with him to this meeting that they were talking to that about, and things are flashing on. But anyway, that worked out. It was really a good experience for me. The whole India thing was good. I didn't get to meet Mother Teresa then, but I did on my next trip. I was called back to India more than once, and it was very beautiful. And one time when I went, somehow word got out, and I sponsored this guy Rajiv, and we started taking a train. We circled all of India, all the way down to the southern part and all the way back up. And everywhere we stopped, there was a group, there was like 20, 30, 40, I don't know, a lot of people meeting us at the train. I don't even know how they knew we were on it. and it was just so cute. And it wasn't anything because of me or anything like that, but it was just I had a lot of clean time, and they'd never seen anybody with that much clean time, and so it was to them it was beautiful, and they wanted to shake my hand and hug me, and I loved it, and it was very beautiful. And Rajiv and I just did workshops everywhere we stopped. We did workshops on the steps and the traditions, and then we would go on and stop at another place. It was very loving, and it was so beautiful to do, and it was all because of daring to listen to my heart, and stuff like that. So over the years, that's been an important thing, and it still is very important to me. And I have to do it even more so now. I mean, it's just in the beginning, it was almost like as I look back, well, what I've seen is this, that recovery is a beautiful thing, but we don't get a gold star. You know, recovery is about showing up and giving every second of our life. You know what I mean? Or trying to do that, at least put it into action. Recovery isn't about getting the gold star. It's about getting another day, though. And I've got another day today, and it's so for me, if you're going to stay clean, for what I have found out, like I went to this meeting when I was 1 year clean, which was a lot to me. Then I went back to Venice for a minute to see my kids, and I had a year. I went to a meeting that night, and this lady was celebrating 14 years, and that was huge to me. And she in her talk, she said something that I usually always share if it comes out right. Uh, 3 minutes left. Wow, I thought I was going to get stuck. I can't finish in 3 minutes, but anyway. Listen, this lady said, she said, the reason I'm 14 years clean today is because I stayed clean when it made no sense to stay clean. This is so important. This is so important to know. To me, it is, because I've been through many times when I stayed clean and it made no sense to do so. And that's what I focus more on, maybe on this kind of stuff, because I want the newcomer to know we can stay clean through anything. And I've stayed clean when it made no sense, and I've come to places where I've lost everything, that was dear to me to hang on to. I've lost marriages, I've lost huge bank accounts, I've lost everything that was important to me on more than one occasion. And that has been a beautiful lesson in my life. When I sit in my 11th step now, yes, it's very beautiful. Yes, I've seen things like my third eye. Who cares? What does that do for you? You know what I mean? But I'll tell you, one thing I do every meditation is I sit down and I invite what's uncomfortable into my life. And there's a lot of that comes. So I try to get friendly with what's uncomfortable for me. I've been through horrendous things in recovery. I've had cancer in recovery and stayed clean through it. Right now I'm struggling with, I got in an accident 2 years ago, and I ended up with a chronic brain injury, and it started showing signs, of stuff like that. And I'm dealing with that now, and I had another accident like that in 2006, but where I had a brain thing happen, and it turned out by the time I finally went to a neurosurgeon because my wife said something's really wrong. And he came out and he said, I shouldn't be alive. I had been bleeding in my brain for 3 months, which kills you. He was just dead serious. He said, you should be dead. So once in a while the other day, I kind of go to my wife and I go, I don't know where this is going to take me. I get kind of spooked about it. Something. Where's this latest thing I'm going through going to take me? And she slammed down her hand like that and said, get back in the now. Get back in the moment. You've been walking around for 15 years with a damaged brain and it hasn't bothered you at all. So just let it go, because everything's going to be fine. There was no feeling sorry for me. This Zoom thing is the most out of sight thing I've ever seen in my life. When everybody was standing up saying where they were from and everything, it was just so touching. And not only is that possible with Zoom, and it's saved my life the last year, because just it's just beautiful. You can just go to a meeting anytime you want, and it's so lovely to be here. I wish I could. I have millions of Flowbird stories and stuff like that, and I have millions of Tom C stories, and Tom M stories. But he'll take off on wherever he's going to go. But for me, it's just been an honor to have your hearts touch mine, and because this is a heart language. When we're sharing, we're talking from the heart. When the people are listening, they're listening with their heart. And there's nothing more beautiful than that, and I know that if I'm in trouble, I can call on so many people, and people would be there to help me at any time. And that's the way it is. There's Flowbird and Tom now, a picture of us. Look at that, guy. Look at that. Anyway, love you guys all. Namaste, aloha. And thank you for asking me to share, Jojo. You put on a big one. You put on a good one tonight. Aloha, namaste.
Aloha, everybody. I'm Tom, and I'm an addict. So many people here that I know. I can't believe it. I didn't know you let the New Yorkers in here, but anyways, it's good seeing you guys. Yeah, so I like it when Tom tells my story because it gives me a lot more time to talk. Otherwise, I have to talk. I have to say it. But anyways, Tom, I love you, and he didn't talk about a lot about really what he's going through. It's been tough, but he never whines, never complains. He just keeps showing up, like he said, So I guess because he set this thing up this way, I'll talk more about Flowbird, and I guess it's cool to do it here. It's unique, because a lot of you guys, regular NA meetings, you don't get into shit like this, but it's a piece of our NA history, at least from our side. There's things about her that were, that Tom didn't talk about. She had all these amazing gifts, these psychic abilities that would freak you out if you're a newcomer. Man, I'll tell you, she freaked me out. I mean, I'd be sitting in a room and I'd be thinking some crazy ass thoughts in my head, and she would look over at me and she goes, "Well, why don't you just get it out and talk about it?" I said, "About what?" And she would tell me exactly what I was thinking. I went, "Holy fuck, man." I said, "This is scary, man. How do you know that?" And then there's lots of little occasions that would happen. And, it freaked me out, and I would ask her, "How do you do that?" And she goes, "Well, I don't do it. It just happens." I go, "With everybody?" She just, "No, some people." And it just so happens, it happens a lot with you. I went, fuck. But, this is what I was dealing with, my early recovery, if you had a hard time believing in a power greater than yourself, you did not have a hard time believing there was something else, whether it's God or whatever. There is something else going on here, because she tuned into some stuff, man, that, was just uncanny, and actually inspiring, if you're young like me back then, who was, really looking for answers, and to see somebody with these kind of spiritual insights and abilities. I'll tell you a story I don't really tell too often. There's a couple of people here that have heard it before. And, so we used to all live in tents, and on the outer islands, and part of what we did every morning, we'd wake up, and everybody would go their own separate ways and sit, and usually it was before the sun rose, and we would meditate, or at least we would pretend we're meditating. I've actually been meditating for 52 years. I get up every morning, I sit, a cup of coffee, I close my eyes. I don't even know if I'm doing it right, but here I am 52 years later, and something's working in my life. I do know that if I didn't do it for a few days in a row, I really feel something different in me. So that tells me something's going on here with that, with consistent meditation. But we were living in these tents, and there was a whole bunch of us. There was maybe up to 24 people, we had all these different tents, and we had a kitchen, and we're on a remote side of the big island, you know. And so one of these mornings, we all got up and went our different ways, and then I came. Everybody left that around 9 or 10 o'clock that morning. Everybody left, went their own ways, and so it was just me at the campsite, and I was kind of tired, and so I went into the tent, and I was in the same tent with Flowbird and this other guy, and they were big tents, and I wanted to take a nap, but I didn't have a pillow on my side of the tent, so I went over to her side and I took her pillow and I went to sleep, and I had this dream, this vivid dream of climbing this mountain, and it was really strenuous and hard, and I got in between, like, a crevice in the mountain. I had to push my elbows, my knees, and work my way up. And I got up maybe 20 feet or so, and all of a sudden I heard this noise down below me, and there was a little dog jumping up and down. And all of a sudden the dog started getting inside the crevice, and he started moving his way up. Well, he ended up getting right in between my crotch, and he's jiggling around, and it's overstimulating me. And so anyways, I had a wet dream. And so after I woke up, I thought, Jesus Christ, what in the hell was that about? And I had been celibate, for over a year. And so I thought, okay, we were like all into interpreting our dreams back then. And so I thought, okay, so the mountain would be the spiritual journey I am. The crevice would be the really hard, tight struggle I'm in. And the dog would be my animal instincts wanting to be expressed. And so they did. I thought that was a good interpretation. And I just took off. And later on, I came walking up the beach, and there's Flober standing out in front of the tent, and she's looking at me. And I noticed the pillow and the pillowcase are hanging from the clothesline. And as I get closer, I wave to her, and she looks at me with a stern look. She goes, "Did you sleep on my pillow?" I said, "What?" She says, "Did you sleep on my pillow?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" She says, "You dream about fucking a dog?" I went, "What?" And she goes, "Jesus Christ," says, I'm sitting there trying to meditate, and these thoughts of a dog and you and fucking a dog. And I said, I'm trying to shake it out of me. She goes, "Don't ever sleep on my pillow again." This is early recovery, man. You want to have something freak you out, man. I would say to her, "Man, I'll let you know where I'm walking so you don't cross my path," because she would pick up on stuff like this. But she just had these abilities. She would get, like Tom said, she would get these intuitions. Do this, go here, and she would just do it. One of the trips when she went around the world, she says earlier one morning, I picked up in meditation, I'm supposed to go to Israel, Viva, Egypt, and she goes, "So everybody, follow your own heart, but if you want to come, let me know." And I said, "Well, we don't even have enough fucking money for a pack of cigarettes, and we're gonna go to Israel." And she goes, "Hey, God will provide where He guides." I go, "Okay, well, we'll see about that." Well, somehow we found ourselves all sitting at the airport in Honolulu, and have no idea what we're doing there at the airport, where we're going to go. And sure enough, something else happens. This other guy finds out we're there. He comes down. He has an apartment in Waikiki. It moves us all into the apartment. And a few weeks later, this is the thing. Flober could have stayed in a lot of different places, really nice places that were just offered to her. And she would sometimes stay there, but she would leave, and choose to, not choose, but just stay in a tent or go somewhere where the living conditions were hard. And we could never figure it out, so she, so I stayed on Oahu. The next thing I know, I get a letter from her. She's in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And then I get a letter, she's in New York. And then I get a letter, she's in Rhoda, Spain. And then I got a letter, she's in Egypt. And then Israel. And everywhere she went, people come out of the damn bushes, man, and like me. And she would just share her stuff, and I think the thing about her that was so powerful was, anybody that would meet her right now, I mean, you would either be enthralled by what an amazing woman she is, or you would think that this woman is a fucking nutcase, and you wouldn't want to get involved with her at all. And some people had that reaction with her, you know. But but there was something about her, like when she sat down with me that second day I got clean, and she told me her story. Um, you know, I had used with addicts, been in jails and all that stuff with addicts, but I never identified with another human being. And when she told her story for the first time in my life, I identified with another human being. I knew this woman was where I had been, just where I was at, and probably went down further. And I knew absolutely she found something. And it was like when I realized that she had found something, it was like, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And she found it. And I knew if I could get what she had, I could make it in this world. As if I knew all my life as a little boy, I knew I wasn't going to make it in this world. My life was going to be trouble, trouble, trouble. And it was. And I said to her, in some words, I said, but I want what you found. And she says, well, I'll tell you how I got it. And she described the 12 steps to me, described the way of living, of trying to be of selfless service, to get out of yourself, go to any lengths to get out of yourself. She said I would have to find a power greater than myself, even though I didn't think I believed in any kind of a God at the time. And she put it this way with me, she just didn't beat around the bush. She says you're going to need to find a power greater than yourself, and you're going to need to find it quickly, and you're not going to make it unless you do. And she goes, and I can't help you, and nobody else can help you do that. It's got to come from within. And man, you talk about being thrown into a state of desperation. I'm not going to make it if I don't get this thing, if I don't find this higher power. And how am I going to find this higher power? I don't even believe in a higher power. And I went through some stuff, some really desperate stuff, and then something happened. Something happened that let me know there's something out there. There's something out there, and I hung on to that thread until I kind of grew into it. And today, I don't ever debate with anybody about whether or not there's a God or not. Basically I say this, if there isn't a God, then you've got to figure I'm one of the luckiest human beings on the planet because of what happened to me and how I got brought into this program and how my life changed and how my life continued to change. One of the wonderful things she did for us, for a lot of us young people, was she talked about life as an adventure, that recovery as an adventure. Not something we had to when you think about recovery, it's like, oh, I got to recover from this sickness and all that. She didn't. She looked at recovery as an adventure, discovering and uncovering. I remember asking her once. I said, "So I don't get the spiritual stuff. What does this spiritual stuff mean?" And she says, "Well, spirit means unseen." I said, "Okay, I get that." She goes, I said, "So, but I'm supposed to become spiritual if I'm going to make it in this program?" She goes, no. She says, you can't become something you already are. She says, what this program's about is these 12 steps is to help you uncover and discover what your true nature really is. He says, and that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing it through love and service. You're going to be doing it through, through working these steps, and by taking risks and, following that intuitive voice. And, I can sum it all up real quickly. And here I am 52 years later, and, a lot of stuff has happened between then and now. And it's been one adventure after another, I was part of the fellowship in Hawaii getting started. And we actually evolved and did a pretty good job. And we didn't have much to do with the mainland. We would hear the rumors about the East Coast and the West Coast fighting with each other's, and we didn't want anything to do with it. But eventually, I ended up, being elected to be the RSR for Hawaii, and end up at the conference. And and I was pretty blown away. The conference was pretty amazing. I really had another sort of spiritual awakening at that conference when I realized how much we had grown, because, in 1968, there was just 20 known Narcotics Anonymous meetings in the world. I mean, we were so small, we didn't even know we were small. And this woman, Flaubert, that morning she talked to me, she handed me a little white book, and she told me there's a program in California called Narcotics Anonymous. So after 7 months clean, I went back to California, and I went to my first NA meeting there. But when I went to that conference, like I say, it just blew my mind how much we had grown all over the country, and it was apparent that we were starting to grow all over the world. They put together a committee back then called the International Affairs Committee at the conference, and they wanted me on the committee, and they said, we want you to take care of Asia because you're in Hawaii. And I said, well, Asia, so what am I supposed to do? And they said, well, you have it. I go, well, do I get a budget? Do I get any staff to help me? And they go, no, you got Asia. And I went, well, that's fucking great, But then but throughout our fellowship, we would never be where we're at today with 75,000 meetings around the world if it wasn't for this power greater than ourselves doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, and that was open doors, find open hearts, people that were willing to step into leadership positions, to dedicate and commit themselves to being of service here. It never would have grown. NA just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of dedication, and that's what started happening. And so I got a call from the AA central office, and they said to me, we have this guy here from Japan, and he wants to talk to somebody from Narcotics Anonymous. So can we give him your number? Because because I used to put my name, my number in the AA hotline down there in case any addicts came through. And so this guy came over to my house. He was Japanese. He didn't speak any English. We got a translator. And anyways, we gave him the literature and told him about NA. And he went back to Japan. And he eventually started. He started NA in Japan, and it started to grow. And we would hear rumors about how much it was growing. And then the members started coming to Hawaii to our conventions and our roundup, our gatherings. And I remember they would say to me, Tom, please come to Japan. And I would say, yeah, I would like to. And they say, yes, we will wait. I go, what the fuck? So they, so I had gotten elected to the board of trustees. Before the World Board, for some of you guys, there was a thing called the board of trustees, and there was 12 of us, and we were also known as the Dirty Dozen. But that's because we had to change all the language in the little white book, and a lot of people were pissed off that we did. So I went to the office and I told them, I said, the Japanese keep asking me to come, and they I said, and they said, well, we don't have enough money to send anybody anywhere. And I said, well, I'll get there, but I just want to make sure I'm not crossing any boundaries or something. And they said, yeah, we'll go. He says, but find out how the Japanese are translating the God stuff, because we'd really be interested in that, because this is the first non-Judeo-Christian fellowship that started. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And so when I got there, I don't speak Japanese, they don't speak English. And the first day they took me around Japan and, in Tokyo in the subways. And when I got back to the hotel that night, the hotel staff behind the desk said, oh, Mr. McCall, your passport, you lost your passport in the subway. And apparently I had put the receipt to my hotel in my passport, and the Japanese would consider finding something very important and returning it as being a privilege and an honor. So at the same time, these 6-7 Japanese members that were with me, they all went, Tom, hiya, power. And I went, what? And they, I didn't get it at first. And then the next day we're walking around Tokyo, and I see these places. They're called pachinko parlors. it's a combination of pinball machines and slot ball and slot machines and it's gambling. And I said, what are these things? They're everywhere. And they brought me in, sat me down, and I started playing, and I'm winning like crazy. I don't have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm winning like crazy. And the Japanese members say, "Oh, Tom, how the power strong in you?" And suddenly I got it, man. These guys got exactly what we all got. We don't know what the fuck we got. All we know is for the first time in our lives, something is working for us. Something is working for us. Whereas before, yeah, I see it, Joe. Whereas before, our lives just didn't work. It was just a consistent cycle of fuck ups, of failures and stuff. So, so the Japan thing, was one thing, and they grew all over the place. And then, and I started getting exposed to other parts of the world. I'm somebody who couldn't even get out of Venice, California, and so getting to Hawaii was a big deal. But then I started going to other places, and I eventually ended up in Thailand and the Philippines and Indonesia, and India, and then I got a part of that that whole thing going on in Iran, where the fellowship was just exploding. For those of you who don't know, man, there's over 500,000 members in Iran, and I ended up going there for a month and a half. Well, for a month, with a bunch of other people from the World Service Office, and traveled the whole country, and it was absolutely amazing. That fellowship is just so on fire. Matter of fact, people wondered, is in Iran, is it NA as we know it? And I go, no, it's actually NA better than we know it. Everybody works the steps. Everybody's had sponsors. Everybody is sponsoring somebody. The meetings of 400 or 500 people in the meetings, and they're so enthusiastic. I mean, we got Abby here from Iran. He knows, and just the energy there is just absolutely amazing. And of course, they treated us being there from the United States, as like rock stars. They would swarm us after would do these presentations. The next thing, God, it actually got scary. It would be like, 50 or 60 people just crowding in on us. And I've never been kissed by more men in the neck than my whole life, because that's what they do there. They grab you, they hug you, and they kiss you in the neck, and they go, Tom, I love you. And you go, okay, just don't love me so hard, and but to watch that fellowship, in that culture, just be able to absorb this program. And I'll finish with this, because we a lot of us talk about how things have fucked up in our fellowship here in NA, and we strike out at the World Service Office or whatever the fuck some of us do, I think we're just bored, and so we're looking for something, to divert our well, it's probably to divert our non-recovery is what it is. But people would ask me, what do you think it is in Iran that made them so successful? And I have my own theories. I think one is, first of all, it's the only organization in Iran that that's allowed to meet in large groups outside of an Islamic setting, and the addicts love it because it gives them a place to express themselves like nowhere else. And two, there's we handed them the whole package, the steps, translated the tips, the steps, the traditions, the guide to service, everything, pretty much gave them the whole package of Narcotics Anonymous. All they had to do is adapt it to their culture and their language. They didn't know anything about the history, all the crazy shit that has gone on here, the fighting over the basic text, the baby blues, all that crazy shit. They could care less about that stuff. All they cared about is helping the next addict, because their attitude is like, you know what, I got mine. No matter how little I've been clean, I got mine. My responsibility is to help you guys get it too. And I swear to God, man, that is so much their focus there, and yeah, they got shit that goes on there like anywhere else, um, but 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 really primarily they're focused on somebody else getting what they found. And I think a lot of us sometimes are just focused on our own shit, and we walk into meetings and sometimes we don't carry the message, we're just here to see our friends, or whatever. But so I guess I've talked over my time, Jojo, and thanks for asking me. And Tom, um, Tom is we're a little bit different from each other's in some ways, but in spirit we are on the same ball, same wavelength. We've been very, very lucky, because we got this thing, and in a way that was really pretty cool, and we continue to keep doing it. Oh yeah, that's right. Jimmy K was supposed to be our speaker,
Right.
but he called me and said he couldn't make it. He was very sick, and then later, a few months later, he died. The next year, we invited Pepe to speak, and just before the gathering, Pepe called us up and said he can't make it, and he went to the hospital and died. So the word was out: if you're an old timer in NA and you're invited to Hawaii to speak, it's not the paradise you think it was. Many of you know this, but my wife just passed away, and she was a big part of the serving in this fellowship and stuff. And you know, um, I've got to experience so much love and support throughout the world while she was sick, and after she passed away. And for all you guys that were a part of that, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and I love you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you both, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Love you, Tom.
Thank you
Love
both.
you, Tom.
Both
Yeah,
of you.
Tom.
Thanks.
Love you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom and Tom.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too, honey.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tom and Tom.